let's go on to some of the things I see. So I suppose a lot of the parents that would come to me in my practice, their children's diet has got worse over time. So they may have started off really good as a baby or toddler. They ate a big variety. They ate kind of what was served. But over time, that has changed. So why is this the case? People will often ask me. So I suppose one of the reasons simply is if our child, or any of us even, are eating a very limited diet, we have to eat these same foods very often. And the problem is we can get very tired of them. And we can get so tired of them, even if they're, our favorite thing, like sausages or whatever, to eat. And we become so tired with them that we don't want to eat them anymore. And then the problem is for these children, if they aren't open to other foods, if they've given up these favorite foods or the foods they eat so often, and they're not open to other foods, then their diet becomes more and more limited over time. Okay, so another, I suppose, scenario I see very often, or parents tell me about a lot, is frequent snacking. So that's the idea, I suppose, of eating very frequently. So what are the problems with this? Some people might say, kids need to eat very often. And then I'll propose some quick solutions. So I suppose the problem with frequent snacking is that we often serve what I call snack foods. So snack foods are, often, high, or they're quite sugary maybe, or sweetened, like yogurt or fruit. They might be finger foods, or, crunchy textures like crackers. So these are very appealing to kids. And that's, if our kids are eating very often, they're more likely to be eating these type of foods. We don't often serve a portion or a little bit or whatever of dinner or of a meal at a snack time. We offer these kind of snack foods so they can dominate the diet. And of course, if any of us, our children or any of us, are eating very frequently, we may not be hungry for meals. So really, ideally, we do what we want with our kids eating is that, they are hungry for meal times, and then they will eat a substantial amount, and then they're satisfied. They're not looking for snacks again quickly after, and they, you can do something else. You can close the kitchen. Okay, so what kind of solutions would I propose for very frequent snackers? So I suppose one thing is to think of a snack more as a mini meal. So instead of, serving the fruit and the yogurt and those kind of snack foods, we would serve something that's more kind of like a meal. So for example, soup with bread, or your raw veg, let's say, with a dip or whatever. So you're kind of moving away from total snack foods. Another really simple idea that might work and that might be feasible in some houses is changing the time of the meal. So some kids may not eat a lot of breakfast, or they may not eat a lot at school, and they come home and they're starving. So that might be the time actually to offer them the main meal, or kind of the dinner of the day. Now, as I said, it's not feasible in every house, but they're most hungry, so they might be more likely to eat it. And then if they eat a substantial amount, they're less likely to want to snack then for the afternoon, because often after school there's less structure in some houses. That's when the snacking happens. And then if there's a lot of snacking, they're not hungry for dinner, let's say, or the main meal in the evening, and then they haven't eaten much dinner, and then they're looking for snacks again after dinner. So it can become a little bit of a vicious cycle. So we have to kind of intervene and change it a little bit rather than this kind of grazing all the time. Another solution might be to offer a more substantial snack. So if it's not feasible to offer the dinner, let's say, or a main meal after school when they come home, you might want to offer, let's say, instead of just fruit and yogurt, you might want to offer, some protein, something that will be more substantial. So again, they're not looking for snacks shortly after, or they're not spending the afternoon snacking. So when parents ask me, how often should my children snack? I suppose, again, I like to say very simply, well, are they hungry for meal times? I really think we should prioritize the three main meals of the day. So the breakfast, a midday lunch, or whatever you call it in your house, and an evening meal or dinner. And if our children aren't hungry for these meals, we might need to look at reducing the snack, moving it further away from the meal, or, changing things around so that they are more hungry for meal times. The priority is the 3 main meals, and then snacks can happen in between that, to bridge the gap. Okay. So again, a lot of parents that would contact me would have, I suppose, a lot of stress around eating. And meal times, especially, I suppose, that main meal in the evening. So, a great question that I often get asked is, how do we create more positive meal times? How do we move away from all this stress? So I suppose one thing is to focus less on the food. Obviously, meal times are about fueling our children, but it's not just about fueling our children. It's also about what else happens at meal times. So like Emmett was saying, for children who spend more time preparing food with their parents, they have other positive outcomes in their life. So, it's about connecting with our children, maybe having a lighter atmosphere, can people tell jokes? Can you tell, something good that happened for the day, something, not so good? So that's maybe important to move the focus more maybe away from exactly what's it or what's not it to kind of a broader issue. It's a meal time. We sit down and we chat and we connect, and that's what meal times should be about. A simple idea that works very well for some children is to offer more control to them around eating. And a simple way of doing this is to offer choices. So let's say I said to my kids, what do you want to eat for dinner? And they might say chocolate. And I'd be like, okay, but that's not on the menu for the dinner, So sometimes giving an open-ended question like that, what do you want for dinner? They can come up with any answer, or they may be overwhelmed. So it's better, I think, if we kind of structure, provide a structure and say, well, do you want maybe 2 or 3, pick 2 or 3 out of these options. So the choices would generally be similar. There might be 2 breakfast cereals. If I said again to my children, or any children, I think, would you prefer, or would you like to have broccoli now or chocolate? I think, the broccoli is never going to win. So if they're kind of similar, like 2 breakfast cereals, then, it's more of a choice rather than something that's seen as very nice and something that's maybe seen as less nice. And of course, pressure is a big thing sometimes with children feel pressure around eating or eating a certain amount. Now, not that any parent intends to apply pressure, and we don't mean to, but sometimes it kind of can happen. So it's important not to, for our children not to feel pressure. So how do we kind of avoid pressure like this around eating? So you could say something very simple like this. You don't have to eat if you're not hungry. I mean it. So some parents will say, well, if I say that, sure, I won't get my kids to eat anything. Or, but I would use a phrase like this only in certain circumstances. So if we offer a reasonable food, okay? So reasonable food is something that your child generally eats, okay? So let's take an example. Let's say it was dinner time and I offered my children a bowl of peas. And I said, that's the dinner now, lads. If you want to eat it, or if you're hungry, eat it. But if you're not, if you're not hungry, you don't have to eat it. But they may not be even comfortable touching peas. So really, is peas a reasonable offer? It's not. So we should offer a reasonable food that they think is reasonable. Like I might think peas, what's the big deal? They're just peas, But my kids may not think peas are reasonable. So offering a food that they think is reasonable means, well, if they're hungry, then they should eat. But there's never pressure to eat. If they're not hungry, we really shouldn't be making our kids eat because they're not hungry. Another thing, I suppose, that's important if we're saying something like this is to not offer an alternative. So if I'm offering a reasonable food, for example, plain pasta or pesto pasta, then I can expect my kids to eat it. And I don't have to, offer something different. So for example, I'm not sure if they really like this lasagna, let's say is the family dinner, and they don't eat much of it. And then I go, okay, they're hungry, and now I have to offer another food. And it's usually a more preferable food. So it might be toast. So some children will hold out if what they're offered first isn't, to their liking, let's say, and then they can fill up on the more preferred food like toast. So there's no incentive to eat the dinner. So again, we want to move away from this cycle, because this can become kind of a repeated cycle, and the kids know, okay, I don't need to eat this first option because there'll be something good coming or better in a little while. And again, the no snack shortly after. If we're offering a reasonable food like the pasta, let's say, then we shouldn't need to offer a snack after, because if they're hungry, they should be able to eat that option.